Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to use COUNTIF and IF functions in order to calculate student scores applying a bonus where necessary. So I've got this situation for an assignment where students had to complete 4 parts, and each of those parts is given a percentage score out of 100. However, if a student scores at least 80% in each of the 4 parts, I want to make sure I give them a bonus. And to top this off, I also display their score out of points, 50 points max. So basically 100% would be equivalent to 50 points for that particular assignment. So I need to write a compound function which is going to look at the scores, give me the appropriate total score, plus apply a bonus if the student meets the minimum criteria. So for instance, this student number 7 here, each of their 4 scores is 80 or higher, so they should be getting a 5-point bonus added to their calculation. Now to do this, I'm going to be using several functions. Some you're probably familiar with, some that could be a little bit new. And I'll just type it right here for student number 7. Basically, the easiest function I'll be using is average. At some point, I am going to need to average these scores together, and that's going to produce a result. However, I need to get my score out of 50, so I can take that and I can multiply it by 0.5 to get half of that, and that student's score would be 42.25. However, since this student met the minimum criteria, they would also get the extra credit. So I'll definitely be using an average function. Now I'm also going to be using a COUNTIF. So basically, I need to write it properly. COUNTIF will look at a range of cells. Okay, so there's my range for some criteria. The criteria is going to be quotation mark greater than or equal to 80, closing quote, closing parentheses. And I want to be able to look back and see how many scores above 80 did that student have. Now, if they only had 2 above 80, that doesn't get the extra credit. But if they have 4 above 80, then we're golden. Okay. So that'll be a COUNTIF function, and of course I'll be using an IF function to contain all of this. If the student has 4 scores, which are greater than 80, then we're going to calculate their average and add 5 points to it. Otherwise, it's just the average. So let's get to work. Now, it doesn't matter which student we write this for, because we're going to autofill it down for all the other students. I'll start up here with number 1, equals if. Now with if, there's the logical test, what we want to check for, and basically I want to check for the number of scores greater than 80. Now what happens if that's true? Well, then we calculate the average score plus, we're going to do 5, comma, what if that's false? Well, it's just going to be the average score. So I've written out my if function in kind of like a natural language just to keep track of the parts. So let's break down these parts in a little bit more detail. Well, the number of scores being greater than 80, that logical test is going to be determined with my COUNTIF function. So COUNTIF parentheses, the range in question, remember I'm working with student number 1 here, so I can just select that range, comma, quotation greater than or equal to 80, closing quote, closing parentheses. Now, I want that count to be equal to 4. It can't be 3, can't be 2, can't be 1 or 0. It has to be 4. Now, if that COUNTIF of greater than or equal to 80 is equal to 4, then the student must earn the extra credit. So then I'm going to take their average of those 4 scores. I've got to multiply those 4 scores by 0.5 to get them into points, and then I'm going to add 5 to that for the extra credit. And this is okay not putting extra parentheses there because the multiplication will occur before the addition. Now, oops, I hit my enter key too soon. So let's see, oh good, it didn't mess me up too bad. And if the student doesn't have those, doesn't get that extra credit, well then it's just going to be their average score. So we'll do the average of those 4 scores and multiply it by 0.5 to get that. And then of course that last parentheses is the closing parentheses for my parent if function. Press enter, there we go, and then I can just double click the fill handle. Oh, that doesn't go too far because I had those other options down there, so let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Just drag that all the way down. And now we can kind of see what's going on. Now to really test this out to see if it's working, we'll just pick on a student here. We'll pick on student number 4, and I'm going to change all of these scores to 80. Of course, if all scores are 80, the average is 80. Of course, that's 40 points out of my scale, but they meet the minimum, so they get 45 because they got the 5 points of extra credit. Now, if we did something similar to the next student, we'll say, all right, well, comes out the same, that's cool. But what if one of their scores was 79 instead of 80? That means they lose the extra credit and their score is calculated at 39.875. I'm going to do one more thing to this. I'm going to take this entire result here, whatever it happens to be, right in front of my if function, but after my equal sign, and I'm going to put a round up. Because I'm a generous teacher, you know? So I'm going to round up, opening parentheses, and at the very end of this, I'm going to put a comma, and I'm still in my round up function, and I'm going to put a 0 because I want to round up to the next whole number, and then a closing parentheses for that round up function. And that'll convert all of these numbers to the next highest whole number. And there we go. And now it stands out a little bit more for my couple of experimental students. Where did they go? Right here. So a student that gets at least all 80s or higher in their 4 parts, they're going to get the bonus. A student that struggles just a little bit and they don't get that extra credit, but they still get a good score, and we do the little round up to make everything a nice whole number. So there you go. So that is the formula or the function that I'm using to look at 4 different scores, calculate a total score, and apply an extra credit bonus if they meet a minimum criteria in each of the 4 parts. Thanks for hanging out with me.